I remember the first time I drove into the Outback at night. The road vanished under a thick, crawling fog, the headlights barely cutting through the gray-white haze. Every so often, a flicker of pale light would catch my eye between the twisted silhouettes of ghost gum trees, as if something or someone was moving just beyond sight. The silence was deeper than I've ever known. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and makes your own heartbeat feel thunderous. Somewhere, a soft hum hummed through the air, low and vibrating, almost mechanical, almost alive. I felt a presence then, not threatening but patient, watching from the shadows. The air smelled of dry earth and iron, the kind that clings to your skin and refuses to leave. I thought I was alone, but every instinct whispered otherwise, and that's when I saw it. A pale shape hovering just above the ground, impossibly still, its form shifting in the mist. I never should have opened the door. The road was barely visible. Fog clung to the edges of the tires, swallowing the white lines. Pale light flickered between the gnarled branches. It came and went, like something breathing just out of sight. I slowed, letting the car roll over the damp asphalt. Every so often, the trees would shiver, though the wind had stilled. Leaves shifted, not with the wind. Something brushed past them, unseen, deliberate. A faint hum rose somewhere above. Or was it behind me? It trembled in the spaces between the trunks. The fog thickened, curling around the mirrors. My own reflection was pale, ghosted, staring back with hollow eyes. I thought I saw a figure, a shadow that moved against the light, dissolving whenever I blinked. The branches quivered as if whispering to one another. The hum grew louder. Or maybe I drew closer to it. Every turn, every flicker of light felt like a heartbeat not my own. Soft footsteps, or was it just leaves, traced the edges of the road. My pulse matched the rhythm of something hidden in the trees. I couldn't tell if I was still alone. The mist pressed in. A pale glow skimmed the bark of twisted trunks. It lingered longer than any car light should, rustling, faint at first, then closer, like hands moving through the undergrowth, and still no one emerged. I tried to name the sound. A fox, maybe, or an owl. But the hum pulsed beneath it, impossible to ignore. Branches snapped softly, one after another. Not with weight, but with intention. I held my breath, feeling the space around me shrink. Every shadow felt alive, shifting, waiting, watching. And I realized the flickers were not from my headlights alone. A single leaf fell at the edge of the road. Then another. And another, drifting without wind like a slow, deliberate countdown. The hum turned almost melodic. Something in its vibration pressed against my chest, and my hands trembled. I wanted to leave, but the road seemed endless, looping back into the fog. I glimpsed movement at the corner of my eye. A pale face? Or just bark twisted in the dim light? Either way, I felt eyes there, heavy and silent. The hum softened, fading into the rustle of leaves. Yet I could still feel the rhythm of unseen feet around me. Soft, measured, patient, I blinked. The light flickered again, and I thought I saw dozens of shapes crouched among the trees, just at the edge of clarity. I held the wheel tighter. The fog thickened, swallowing even the pale light, and still, the humming lingered, like it had nowhere else to go but into me. The road curved. The trees leaned closer, their branches brushing the car, whispering secrets I couldn't hear. I stopped, the engine ticking softly, a fragile heartbeat in the quiet. All around, the forest waited, rustling, humming, shadows shifting. And somewhere beyond the fog, the feeling of being watched never left. I pressed my forehead to the wheel, hoping it was just my imagination. But the soft, deliberate footsteps continued, fading only when I held my breath too long. The pale light flickered once more, and I understood that the trees were not just trees. Not entirely, something moved between them. Always just out of focus. Always close enough to feel, and then silence. But the weight of unseen eyes stayed, lingering in the fog, waiting patiently, even as I drove on. The trail was quiet. Leaves rustled, but only in fragments, like pieces of a broken whisper. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and cold smoke. I noticed him first because of the stillness. A shape paused on the bend, almost too straight, almost too perfect. The pale moonlight touched his face, catching in his eyes. They weren't bright, not alive, just reflections. Cold, distant mirrors staring back at me. I slowed my steps. The gravel shifted under my boots, loud against the hush of the forest. He didn't move, or if he did, it was as if the world bent around him. There was a soft glide, the kind that shouldn't happen to bodies, to feet. The soundless movement made the air tremble. I wanted to call out. A name, a question, anything. But my throat refused, and the forest held its breath with me. The trail narrowed. Branches leaned closer, brushing at my shoulders. A fog began to gather, curling around my ankles. He raised his head slightly. His eyes caught the moon again, and I saw the emptiness deeper than the night. I stepped closer, compelled by something I didn't understand. And then he was gone. Not behind a tree, not into the shadows, just vanished. The dirt where he had stood was disturbed. Small pebbles shifted. Leaves pressed flat, as if he had been here, and then erased. A silence stretched. Not just quiet, but a heavy pause, pressed into the air like wet cloth. Even the wind hesitated. I crouched, fingers brushing the soil. It felt cold, unnatural. The imprint was wrong, not quite like any footprint I had seen. A shiver ran up my spine. I stood too quickly. The fog thickened, obscuring the trail behind me. Something moved then, soft, deliberate. Not steps, not a shuffle, but a glide echoing in the periphery. I spun, searching the pale light. Nothing, just the trees, breathing slowly, watching. I called again. My voice was swallowed, carried into a space I could not reach. Only the rustle answered, and I wondered if it belonged to him or to the forest. The night stretched further. Stars blinked uncertain behind the fog. My shadow seemed to hesitate beside me, like it had been following me all along. A smell rose, iron, wet, and old. I couldn't place it. Couldn't tell if it was on the wind or in the soil itself. I moved forward cautiously. Each step sank slightly into the softened dirt. I imagined his gaze, still watching, just out of reach. Branches reached across the path. They scraped my arms, whispered secrets I couldn't catch. I thought I saw a flash of white ahead, quick, gliding. I froze. Every nerve stretched, listening. The silence returned, heavier this time, pressing on my chest. The trail opened into a small clearing. Moonlight spilled over stones and moss, but he was nowhere to be seen. I stepped into the center. Leaves crunched beneath my boots, startlingly loud in the stillness. And then I noticed it. The ground in a small circle pressed down, flattened, no footprints. No disturbance beyond that single, impossible shape. It was like he had simply folded space around himself, leaving only absence. A soft wind curled through the clearing. It whispered or maybe sighed. I couldn't tell if it was the forest or him. I turned slowly, scanning the edges of the trees. Shapes leaned, twisted in ways that seemed almost conscious. The shadows weren't shadows anymore. They were expectations, waiting. I wanted to run. But my legs were uncooperative, heavy with something I couldn't name. The air was thick now, pressing into my chest, making each breath deliberate, slow. Then, a sound, very faint. A scraping just beyond the trees, like claws over rock or fingernails over dirt. I whispered to myself, repeating a name I hoped would ground me. But the sound didn't stop. It moved around me, not coming closer, not retreating, and then silence again. Deep, impossible, the kind of silence that makes you doubt you ever made a sound at all. I left the clearing slowly. The fog swallowed my trail. I could feel eyes on me even when the night seemed empty. When I finally reached the bend where I had first seen him, the dirt was smooth, as if no one had ever been there. Even the leaves looked untouched. I pressed my hand to my chest, trying to steady it. But the hollow pull of those eyes lingered. A memory of pale light and gliding silence. The trail curved into darkness. I kept walking. And somewhere, behind me, or beside me, I felt the softest shift in the shadows. Something moving, without sound, almost like it had never been, yet could never truly be gone. The field was quiet. Tall grass bent beneath a pale, wandering wind. I followed the faint hum, soft at first, like a lullaby half remembered. It led me to a radio, old, rusted, alone on a splintered wooden crate. The dial was coated in dust, the numbers faded. I crouched. My fingers hovered over the knob. A spark of curiosity nudged me. Then the static. It came like a sigh. Soft. Crackling. Shifting. Hello. I froze. No one was near. The field stretched empty in every direction. Hello. Alex, my name spoken, not by me. Not by anyone I could see. The static pulsed. A rhythm that didn't belong. I leaned closer, breath catching in the cold. Alex. It's been a long time. The grass shivered, though the wind had stilled. I wanted to step back. But my legs stayed, rooted. Do you remember the house? I swallowed. My mouth dry, the house. The one I hadn't thought of in years. I hadn't told anyone about it. The radio crackled. Images flickered in my mind. The pale hallway. The peeling wallpaper. Shadows sliding beneath the door, Alex. I remember. My heart pounded in my ears. I could almost see it. A figure, pale, standing at the edge of vision. It wasn't moving. Just watching, waiting. I blinked. The field was empty again. The voice grew sharper. Personal. Your mother. She tried to warn you. I wanted to turn away, to leave the radio. But my curiosity wrapped tight around me. The static thickened, now louder than the wind. Don't you hear it? I did. A soft scratching like fingernails on wood, echoing in the distance. The radio's light flickered, faint, pale, like it remembered the sun. Alex, I see you, I whispered, though no one could hear. I see you. The grass bent again. Shadows stretched, long and thin. The air felt heavy, thick with something that shouldn't be. I could hear breathing. Not mine. Slow, deliberate, somewhere just beyond the static. The radio shifted on the crate. Just a fraction, enough to make me think it might move on its own. Do you want to come closer? I froze. Closer. To what? The voice softened, almost intimate. I've missed you. And in that moment I realized it knew things only I knew. My fears, my hidden corners, a crow cawed far away. The sound sharp, jarring against the hum, then silence, just the faint crackle, like a heartbeat. I stepped forward, hesitated. My hand touched the dial. The voice whispered again. Look behind you. I obeyed. Nothing. The grass swayed, the wind still absent. Then a movement, subtle, at the corner of my eye. Shadows, stretching longer than they should. The static intensified, and I could hear words, fragments, disjointed, dripping with familiarity. Alex, your room. The window cold. My chest tightened. Every memory I tried to bury was rising. Flickers of pale light through curtains. Footsteps I never traced. Whispers I pretended I never heard. The radio pulsed with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I wanted to run. But my body refused. Alex, do you remember the last time? The last time. The question hovered, unspeakable, unseen. The field was silent again, save for the radio's low hum. I leaned closer. The static calmed, almost gentle. Come back soon. And then nothing. The radio sat still. Cold metal. Dusty. Ordinary. But I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. The wind whispered through the grass, and I felt it. Watching me. Patient. Waiting. The sun dipped lower, pale light stretching across the field. I didn't know if I would return to this place tomorrow, or the day after, but I knew it would still be there, and maybe, somewhere in the crackle, it would still whisper my name. The hill looked ordinary at first. A gentle slope beneath a pale morning sky. Mist clung to the grass, soft as wool. I noticed the hum before I saw the hill. A low vibration, almost felt more than heard. It crawled through my bones, familiar and wrong. Each step up the slope pressed into silence. The fog thickened around my ankles, curling like smoke. The trees along the path faded, their shapes uncertain. The hum didn't stay steady. It pulsed, shallow and deliberate. I imagined it had a rhythm, one that knew me. I paused on a knoll, looking back. The town below vanished, blurred by white haze. Even the road seemed to hesitate. Dissolving halfway down, a shadow flickered across the mist. I thought it might be a bird, but the movement was too smooth, deliberate. My shoes sank into damp earth. Each step felt heavier than the last. The hum deepened. It was patient, waiting. Branches scraped softly against each other. The sound was close, then far. I realized the wind wasn't moving. Something shifted behind me. I spun, but the fog offered only blankness. A sense of being watched crawled across my skin. The hill narrowed, the path less clear. Each tuft of grass seemed taller, darker. Shadows stretched unnaturally in the pale light. The hum rose, a low tide that filled my chest. I tried to follow it, but the path disappeared into a blur of white. I stumbled over stones I couldn't see. The air was thick, tasting of damp earth and rust. The hum wasn't distant anymore. It wrapped around me. A flicker of movement caught my eye. Not a shadow of a tree, not a trick of fog. Something alive, small yet impossibly large. I slowed, heart uneven. The fog swallowed sound. Even my breath seemed fragile. Every step forward felt like leaving something behind. The ground tilted under me, though I couldn't see the slope. The hum pulsed through my feet now, rising, falling. I reached the crest of the hill. Nothing waited there. No shape, no figure, no life. Only the hum and the soft brush of fog against my face. I felt a presence. Not beside me, not in front. It was everywhere at once, a gentle insistence. The fog shifted, revealing nothing. Rocks and grass, indistinct, melting into gray. I called out. My voice swallowed instantly. The hum responded. A ripple, soft and deep, like something exhaling in time with me. I wanted to run, but my feet refused, rooted in invisible soil. The hills seemed to breathe beneath me. Light fell pale and scattered across the mist. I thought I saw a figure in the distance, leaning, watching, but when I blinked, it was gone. The wind carried a whisper. Not words, just a tone, a resonance that mirrored the hum. I crouched on a boulder, trying to make sense. Shadows stretched long, unnatural. Every shape felt both familiar and wrong. The hum thickened, pressing against my temples, but not painful, insistent, like it wanted attention. I blinked, shaking my head. When I looked again, the fog seemed almost solid. I could see my own reflection in the damp air, pale and distant. A soft step, or maybe a shift of air. I couldn't tell. I kept moving, the hum guiding, chasing, until the hill flattened and the fog opened. Nothing. Only echoes of vibration. My body tingled, every hair awake. I sat on the ground, listening. The hum receded slightly, but the feeling of eyes never left. Time became meaningless. Minutes, hours, seconds, all folded into the white, into the hum. I rose slowly, walking in circles, searching for landmarks that weren't there. Shadows curved, reached, then dissolved as the fog shifted. I realized I was not alone, but there was no shape to confront. The hum softened, a lullaby in a language I almost knew. I let it guide me, feet moving though my mind felt hollow. At the edge of the hill, the fog thinned, revealing the valley below. The town was still absent, lost to distance and mist. The hum lingered, a vibration in my chest, a reminder of being watched, even when nothing remained to watch. I sat down, head resting on my knees, and let the hill breathe around me. The hum faded slowly, but the feeling stayed, a quiet presence I could not name, and would never leave. The fog lay heavy over the clearing. It pressed against my skin, damp and cold, clinging to the back of my neck. The trees around me were dark shapes, motionless, but I felt them leaning in. My boots sank slightly into the soft earth. I had come here thinking the walk would clear my head. Now the air tasted like metal. A faint glow flickered at the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought it was a reflection from the wet leaves. But it didn't move. I froze. The glow multiplied. Tiny, piercing points of light blinked into existence like stars fallen too close to the ground. Eyes. A cluster of eyes hovered at the tree line. They didn't blink. They didn't move. I could almost convince myself they weren't alive. I stepped back. My foot caught on a root, sending a soft snap through the silence. The eyes didn't flinch. They didn't acknowledge me. The fog thickened. It rolled over the ground, brushing against my ankles, climbing my legs. I wanted to speak, to break the hold of their stare. But my voice caught somewhere in my throat. Each heartbeat sounded louder than the last. Or maybe the fog was swallowing the world around me, leaving only the glow. The ground between me and them seemed to ripple, though the air was still. A low hum brushed at the edges of my hearing. Not mechanical, not natural. It thrummed in my chest. I tried to look away. The eyes held me. They weren't animals. They weren't shadows. Yet something in their stillness felt conscious, waiting. I inched backward, dragging my gaze reluctantly. My shoulder brushed against a tree trunk. Its bark was rough. The smell of wet earth clung to my fingers, and then they vanished. No flicker, no retreat. The glow simply blinked out. The forest was empty again. The fog swallowed the space where they had stood. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The clearing seemed too quiet, almost waiting. Something caught my eye. The ground where the eyes had hovered was different, charred. A pale scorch like frost had burned the earth, etched the soil with patterns I couldn't recognize. I knelt down. The smell of smoke lingered, sharp and acrid. No footprints, no tracks. Just the scorched earth whispering that something had been here, and that it had left its mark. The fog curled around me again, brushing my cheeks. It smelled of ash and damp leaves. I stood, feeling the weight of eyes that were no longer present. The clearing had changed, subtly, smaller, quieter. Yet I could feel them in the periphery, hovering beyond sight. I wanted to move. I wanted to run. But the forest had a pulse now, syncing with mine. A rhythm that told me I was not alone, even in the absence of movement. A twig snapped behind me. I turned sharply. Nothing. Just the fog, coiling and rolling as if mocking my fear. The glow did not return. But neither did peace. The scorched patch of earth felt alive beneath my fingers, humming faintly with a memory I could not name. A memory of being watched. I walked slowly back toward the path. Every step sounded louder than it should have. Leaves whispered in the damp air, bending toward me, retreating as I passed. The forest seemed empty, yet not. It breathed around me, a soft, patient exhalation, waiting for me to look back. I didn't. By the time I reached the road, the fog had thinned. Streetlights flickered above the asphalt. I could hear cars in the distance, life continuing without pause. But I carried the clearing with me. The scorch remained in my mind. A reminder that some things leave a mark even when they vanish, even when no eyes remain to watch. I don't know what they were, or why they waited. But I feel them sometimes, just beyond the fog, in the corner of my vision. Patient, silent. And I know that the earth remembers too. It waits. The forest was quiet. Almost too quiet. Autumn had painted the trees in muted golds and browns. A thin fog curled around the trunks, settling low to the damp ground. I came upon a campsite, though I hadn't been expecting one. Smoke drifted lazily from cold ashes, curling upward and vanishing into the gray morning. The tents sagged under the weight of empty air, flaps fluttering in a breeze I couldn't feel. Rusted tools were scattered near the fire pit. A small pot leaned against a rock, blackened from past flames. Everything smelled faintly of smoke, of something that had been alive and then gone. I stepped closer. The ground was pressed with footprints, now faint and fading. Each one seemed to hesitate, as if whoever had walked here had been unsure of their path. A rustling stirred from the tree line. I froze. Something moved just beyond the fog, pale and quick. I whispered to myself, though I knew no one would hear. The wind answered, but only barely, carrying hints of voices. Soft, fleeting. Almost like laughter, but too hollow to be warmth. The fire pit stirred. Embers lifted on their own, glowing briefly with an orange light. I blinked. The flames were gone, as if inhaled by the cold air. I walked around the campsite slowly. The tents were empty, yet the smell of wet canvas lingered, alive in memory. A backpack lay unzipped, its contents scattered. A notebook, a pair of socks, a small flashlight. Then the whispers grew. Not close enough to understand, but insistent. A thread of words, half-formed, hanging in the fog. I could see movement now. shadows weaving between the trees, impossible to track. They didn't step on the leaves, didn't disturb the ground. They were lighter, or maybe faster than light. I reached the fire pit again. The embers had returned, warmer this time. They flickered as if beckoning, then vanished in a sudden gust that carried a hint of ash into my hair. I tried to call out. My voice caught in my throat. The forest answered only with silence and the faintest ripple of rustling leaves. The wind shifted. I could hear it passing through branches, across the tents, around the scattered tools. It felt deliberate, as if the air itself were rearranging the campsite, hiding and revealing at the same time. A flashlight lay on its side, still flickering. I picked it up, the beam cutting a thin line through the mist. It illuminated nothing, and yet everything seemed clearer. The abandoned gear, the flattened grass, the uneven footprints. I felt eyes on me. Or perhaps it was memory, mine or someone else's. A pulse of unease pressed against my chest, slow and steady. The fire reignited again. A small flame, gentle, breathing, almost alive. It whispered warmth, but I felt cold creep along my neck and arms. And then it went out. Sudden. The wind rushed through the tree line, carrying the faint, fleeting voices with it. I tried to follow them. I stepped toward the forest, toward movement that was just beyond understanding. But each step felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted my presence. The campsite seemed larger now. Tents stretched longer, tools scattered in new patterns I hadn't seen before. Nothing remained still. Even the fog shifted, thickening and thinning in silent rhythm. I could see figures then, just at the edge of the light, pale and blurred. They paused, watching me, or maybe watching something I could not see. The whispers returned, more urgent but still fractured. Hints of laughter, the soft sighs of breath, footsteps that never touched the earth. I couldn't stay, and yet I couldn't leave entirely. The pull was gentle but persistent, like the campsite itself had grown a quiet hunger. I took one last look at the fire pit. The embers glowed faintly, a heartbeat of light that felt almost alive. I turned, walking back through the fog, listening to the whispers fade behind me. Something followed, I was sure of it. Not a person, not an animal, something else or someone else. I didn't look back. The forest swallowed the smoke, the tents, the scattered tools. Only the faintest trail of ash lingered, drifting on the wind, fading, and even now, when I close my eyes at night, I can feel it. The campsite, breathing quietly somewhere beyond the trees, waiting. The night was unusually still. The air tasted faintly metallic, carrying a coldness that didn't belong to autumn. I sat on the porch, binoculars heavy in my hands, scanning the dark horizon. A light appeared first as a pinprick, distant and unsteady. I thought it was a star at first, but stars do not pulse. It blinked once, twice, a slow, rhythmic beat that made my chest sink to its pattern. I leaned closer, fog curling from my mouth in soft spirals. The binoculars brought it nearer, sharp against the black sky, too precise, too deliberate. It changed, not in movement but in intelligence. The pulses grew faster, then paused mid-thought, like it was waiting for me to catch up. I dropped the binoculars for a second. When I looked back, the light shifted slightly. A line of static flickered across the lens, faint, like a whisper between worlds. Everything electronics nearby hummed low. My phone, abandoned on the table, vibrated with unrecognizable patterns. The static crawled through the speakers, a soft stutter that made my teeth ache. I raised the binoculars again. The light now moved as if aware of my gaze. Patterns twisted, spirals tightening and loosening, a code written in the dark. I tried to blink it away to convince myself it was imagination. The wind rustled softly through the trees, but the hum remained deeper, closer. I could almost hear it think. The porch floorboards shifted under my weight. I crouched, trying to stay quiet. The light pulsed once, long and knowing. Something in the sky watched. Not through eyes, not as a creature might, but like thought itself had taken shape. A presence that was patient, measuring, intelligent. I reached for my laptop, hoping to capture it. Every device flickered in turn, screen, camera, radio. Static grew louder, filling the corners of the room, yet the light outside remained untouched, unshaken. I pressed record. The moment my finger touched the button, the pattern stuttered. Pulses became jagged, uneven, almost playful. It shifted when observed directly, avoiding capture, laughing in a way that rustled the air across my skin. I stepped back from the porch. The night was darker now, as if the stars had dimmed in fear. A faint breath of cold passed across my neck. I wanted to run, to hide, but my legs wouldn't obey. The light pulsed faster, sending vibrations through my bones. It felt aware of me, aware of my fear. The trees swayed gently, whispering. Leaves scraped together softly like whispers trying to form words I couldn't understand. Yet the light remained, waiting, patient. I lowered the binoculars once more. A shadow stretched across the horizon, fleeting, unnatural. I blinked. It was gone. A low hum started from inside the house. Not from a device, something older, something living in the walls. I could hear it, resonating under my ribs, echoing in my skull. I reached the table again. My notebook, empty before, now had marks I didn't remember writing. Lines and shapes mimicked the light above. Symbols, or perhaps instructions. The pulse slowed, then stopped. I held my breath. Silence fell thick, heavy, not peaceful, not natural, but expectant. I felt the weight of something vast pressing just beyond vision. A single pulse returned, brighter than before. It lingered, stubborn, lingering like a question. And then another, answering it, as if the night itself had a heartbeat. I wanted to speak, to ask it what it was. But my voice caught somewhere in the throat of the wind. I whispered nothing, and still it listened. The devices all went dead simultaneously. The hum ceased. Only the light remained, distant, precise, indifferent. I stayed on the porch long after it faded. Breath fogged around me. The night held a memory, a pulse that wasn't mine. I don't know if it was warning or curiosity or merely play. But when I close my eyes, I can still see it, patterned, patient, pulsing just beyond thought. And sometimes, late at night, I feel the pulse reach me through the silence, soft, insistent, like a question I may never answer. The path was narrow, lined with trees whose branches tangled above like thin fingers. Moonlight sifted through the leaves, pale and hesitant. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and decay. I walked slowly, the gravel crunching underfoot. Every so often I thought I heard another crunch, just behind me. I paused. The sound stopped. When I moved again, it returned. Step, step, step. Always behind, matching my rhythm. I stopped once more. Silence stretched between the trees, thick and cold. But the stillness had weight, as if someone, or something, was holding its breath with me. I tilted my head, listening. Leaves whispered in a soft wind. Branches scraped each other like fingernails over glass. The footsteps resumed, deliberate now. They weren't hurried. Not panicked, they followed my every move. I tried quickening my pace. So did they. The moon shifted, and a fog began to curl along the path. Shadows stretched long and pale, hiding what might be just beyond sight. I wanted to turn to see who or what was keeping pace, but my feet refused. Step, step, step. It was a rhythm that felt patient, watching, waiting. The trees thinned ahead, revealing a small clearing. The fog lingered at the edges, curling like smoke from a forgotten fire. I stopped at the edge of the clearing, and the footsteps stopped too. The air was almost warm in its stillness. I held my breath, waiting for the world to decide what would happen next. I took another step. 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 They returned, closer now. Closer than the trees should allow. A shiver ran down my spine. The clearing seemed to tilt under the moonlight, the shadows bending just slightly too sharp. Something waited, but I could not see it. I tried speaking. My voice cracked and was swallowed by the fog. No reply came. I began walking again, slower this time, deliberately. Each step measured, cautious. Each echo behind me followed with perfect precision. A branch snapped somewhere to my left. I whipped around. Nothing. Just fog. Just the trees. I could feel the presence then, just at the edge of my senses. It did not hide. It did not move. It simply waited. The path narrowed again, and the fog thickened. I kept my eyes on the ground, tracing each shadowed stone. Step, step, step. I wondered if the sound existed only because I imagined it, or if my imagination existed because the sound was real. A loop I could not escape. My chest tightened, breath shallow. I tried to move faster, but the path felt endless. I sensed something shift behind me. Not a step, not a movement, just a presence. Closer, then further. Mocking patient. A soft rustle brushed against the hem of my coat. I froze. The fog swallowed the noise, leaving a quiet that pressed against my ears. I stopped again. And again the footsteps stopped. The world was suspended in that moment, fragile, waiting for me to make the next move. I stepped forward, step, step, and the sound returned. The path curved. Moonlight glinted off wet leaves. Every shadow seemed to twitch in acknowledgement of something unseen. I wondered if I should run. But running would only give it purpose, a rhythm to follow. So I walked, deliberately slow, step by step. The fog began to thin. The clearing behind me swallowed itself. Still, the presence lingered, an imprint in the air I could not escape. I turned my head slightly. Nothing but moonlit trees, pale and patient. Nothing but my own echoing steps, and yet I knew it was still there. Step, 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 always behind. I reached the edge of the forest, the path opening onto a small, empty field. The fog lingered at its borders, curling like a warning. I dared to stop. The footsteps stopped too. But I could feel them, heavy and deliberate, pressed against the back of my mind. I moved a few more paces, careful, measured. And still the memory of the rhythm stayed. Step, step, step. I did not look back. I could not. Only the wind whispered through the grass, and the moonlight lay pale across the earth. But the echo remained, a shadow in the fog. Or a shadow of me, walking alone and never quite alone at all. The desert stretched endlessly, pale beneath the moonlight. Cold air brushed my skin, sharper than the night suggested. Sand shifted quietly beneath my boots. I saw it then. A boulder, enormous, resting like an old sentinel. Its surface was rough, pitted, almost breathing in the dim light. I approached. Closer now, I noticed a hollow dark as spilled ink. The entrance was jagged, as if the rock had been split by hands, not nature. I should have stopped. A whispering instinct told me to turn, but curiosity pressed me forward, slow steps crunching in the sand. Inside, the air changed. It was colder than the night outside. A damp, metallic scent lingered, like the rock itself had absorbed centuries of wind and shadow. The hollow curved inward, narrower than the opening suggested. Shadows pooled in corners, deep and still. I felt them watching me, though nothing moved. Strange markings lined the walls. Lines and loops, carved impossibly smooth, like fingers had drawn in stone with a precision beyond my mind. I knelt. The markings seemed to pulse in the pale light. Each groove swallowed shadows, as if the stone was eating the air around it. Then came the sound. A scratching, faint, deliberate, from somewhere unseen, close enough to feel in my chest. I froze. Breath held tight. The sound circled, vanished, returned. I tried to step back. The rock shifted, or I imagined it. A subtle movement just enough to unbalance my senses. The hollow felt alive, its depth folding in on itself. I whispered. No answer, only the scratching that seemed to mock the sound of my voice. I touched the wall. Cold, impossibly cold, far colder than the desert air outside. Time became uneven. Seconds stretched, elongated like shadows at dawn. I looked back at the opening. It had narrowed, impossibly. Panic tugged at my mind. I stumbled, scraping my palm along the stone. The sound behind me multiplied. Tiny claws on stone, over and over, until it seemed the hollow itself was breathing. I thought of light. A single star above, but it did nothing here. No light touched the deep corners. The darkness had density, weight. I forced myself forward. The air grew damp, like I had crossed into a cave beneath a graveyard. Scratching followed, now intermittent, patient. Each pause stretched like a held breath, then returned, deliberate, testing. I reached a corner. The hollow curved impossibly again. A glimmer of white stone caught my eye. An irregularity. A carved hollow within the hollow. Inside, the markings formed shapes I almost recognized. Faces? Shadows? I could not tell. The shapes recoiled when I blinked. I whispered to myself, a mantra to keep my mind anchored. But the scratching had become whispers, faint syllables, almost words, rising from corners I could not see. Fear clung like sand in my shoes. I tried to retreat. Step after step, the hollow resisted. It felt endless, folding in on itself, turning away from the night outside. I stopped, closed my eyes. The whispering paused. The scratching halted. Only my shallow breath filled the cavern. And then the first light. A thin line of dawn sliced the edge of the opening. The hollow exhaled. Shadows receded. Walls lost their depth. I moved. Feet light, unsteady, yet free. The markings seemed duller now, less alive. Outside, the desert was quiet, moonlight fading to gray. The boulder rested as it had before, silent. I glanced back. The hollow waited, patient, holding the chill and whispers of a night I could not name. Even now, in the sun, I feel it under my skin. A weight of shadow, folded into memory, and I know if I returned, it would be the same hollow, the same cold, the same faint scratching from corners I cannot see. I do not want to return. But somehow, part of me already has. The night was still. A thin mist curled over the waterhole, folding the dark into soft shapes. I could see stars scattered across the surface, as if the sky had fallen to rest in the shallow pool. My reflection floated there, pale and quiet, twisting with the slight ripples. And then I saw it. Someone or something stood behind me, perfectly mirrored. Every movement echoed mine. I didn't breathe. The air thickened, damp against my skin, and my heart thudded softly, uneven. I shifted my gaze, slow, deliberate. Nothing. The water still held the image. The figure lingered just behind my shoulder, its head tilting like mine would, except its eyes. I tried to focus, but the ripples danced, and the eyes blurred. They weren't mine. Not quite. I moved a hand to the water. The reflection mimicked me instantly, a little too precisely, a little too eagerly. I pulled back. A rustling came from the edge of the clearing. Leaves whispered against one another, a soft disturbance that made the figure in the water flicker. I could almost convince myself it was the wind, the night shifting. But the reflection didn't sway. It watched me, and then it smiled. I froze. I wasn't smiling. I would never smile like that. Its lips stretched too wide, the kind of quiet twist that lingers behind closed doors. A chill crawled down my spine. The fog thickened. I thought I heard soft footsteps behind me. Just behind. I dared to turn. Nothing. Only the mist. The trees, skeletal in the faint moonlight. The pool, still holding that impossible twin. I whispered my own name. It whispered back, low, faint, but not mine. Not exactly. The water's surface trembled. Ripples widened slowly, distorting the figure's gaze. Its smile wavered, then disappeared, leaving a hollow shadow. I stepped back. The earth was cold beneath my feet, sucking heat from the soles, a quiet ache spreading through me. The reflection followed. I considered leaving. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't answer. I was rooted, as if the water had claimed me first. The night grew deeper. The mist thickened. Breath hung in the air like smoke. Every exhale sounded louder than it should, echoing off the trees. I blinked. The reflection shifted. Not like before, not in perfect mimicry. It tilted its head, slow, thoughtful, almost curious. I realized then that it wasn't waiting for me to move. It was waiting for me to see. Really see. And I did. There, in the shallow glow of the stars mirrored on the water, I noticed the details that didn't belong. The hands, longer than mine. The hair, dark and flowing, yet impossibly still. The eyes, hollow, but shimmering faintly, like moonlight trapped in glass. I swallowed. The silence was alive. The trees stopped whispering. The fog paused mid-drift. I leaned closer to the water, compelled. My reflection leaned with me. And for the briefest, most unbearable second, the eyes met mine. Then the water shivered. A single drop fell from the leaves above, breaking the surface. The figure vanished. Just a ripple remained, expanding slowly outward. I exhaled. A part of me thought it was over, that perhaps it had only been a trick of light, a shadow thrown from the mist. But when I turned, the clearing was empty, the air still, the fog hollowed, and yet the silence felt wrong, hollow, expectant, as if something unseen had followed, lingering in the spaces my eyes couldn't reach. The water's surface reflected the stars once more. I leaned in again, trying to catch a glimpse. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed, and yet the faintest shimmer trembled along the edge of the reflection. A suggestion of a presence just beyond certainty, a whisper, unformed, hovering in the dark. I stepped back. The fog curled tighter around my ankles. Every instinct told me to leave, and I wanted to, but my gaze drifted back to the water anyway. For a moment, just a moment, the stars themselves seemed to ripple, and I thought I saw it again. Not behind me, not fully formed, but there. Watching, waiting. I didn't move. I just stared. Until the night settled once more, silent, patient, and full of eyes that were not mine. The fog had settled thick over the forest. It clung to the trees, curling around their bare limbs. Even the path here seemed to hesitate, swallowed in pale light. I found the shack by accident. Or maybe it found me. The wood was old, splintered, the air already smelling of damp and dust. Inside it was colder. Shadows gathered in corners where the ceiling sagged. The floorboards groaned softly, but I was alone. I thought. The dolls were there first. Rows of them, faces cracked, eyes hollow. They stared, unblinking at first, then a slow, impossible blink all at once. I froze. Their heads tilted slightly. I hadn't moved. Yet their gaze followed me like a soft, breathing pressure. I tried to convince myself it was light, the angle of the sun outside, but the fog had swallowed the day. I could barely see beyond the window. And still, something pressed against the glass, watching. The dolls shifted again. A tilt here, a blink there, synchronized in a way that was deliberate, knowing. I couldn't breathe properly, my chest tightening with each quiet motion. A low hum filled the room. Or maybe it came from me. The sound seeped between the cracks in the walls, vibrating through the floor. I stepped toward a shelf. One doll's eyes were wider than the rest, reflecting me. The hollow gaze felt wet, as if it could reach inside me. The fog outside thickened. I could no longer see the trees, the path, the edge of the world. Everything beyond the shack became a blur of gray. Soft footsteps? Or was it mine? The dolls seemed closer now, their shadows stretching. I wanted to look away, wanted to run, but my legs refused. A window rattled. Something outside shifted, pale shapes dancing beyond the glass. I whispered, not aloud, but inside my head, trying to call it nothing. One by one, the dolls blinked again. And then the blink stayed, their eyes, hollow, wide, fixed in the same impossible stare, unblinking now. I felt a presence at my shoulder, though nothing had moved. A cold press, shallow and soft. It watched, patient. I sank to the floor, unable to turn. The dolls remained, silent but alive in the corner of my vision. The fog wrapped the shack, isolating me from everything I knew. Outside, the pale light faded, swallowed by the mist. I listened to my own breath, trying to convince myself I was still alone. And yet, the hum continued, low and constant, a reminder that eyes were everywhere. I don't remember leaving. I only know the dolls remained when I blinked, and the fog never lifted. Something pressed against the window again. I stayed still, hoping maybe it would go away, but it didn't. It waited. The desert is quiet tonight. Cold air brushes against my skin. The sand feels heavy underfoot, soft and yielding, yet endless. A light flickers far on the horizon. Pale, almost white, but pulsing. It feels alive, as though it breathes in time with me. I start walking toward it. Every step sinks into the fog that has begun to curl around my ankles. It smells of dust, of something faintly bitter like iron in rain. The light shivers when I move. I stop. It recedes a little, just enough to draw me forward again. I tell myself it is just distance, just perspective. The horizon is playing tricks, but the hum it carries, soft, almost inaudible, is not a trick. The sand stretches wider here. Shadows shift over dunes, though the wind is still. I can hear my own breath, sharp, uneven. I pause to watch it. The light grows brighter for a moment, then dulls, pulsing like a heartbeat. It waits, patient, watching. My legs ache. My mind hums with something I cannot name. The fog thickens around my knees, then my waist. I think I see shapes in it. Tall, bending, like the skeletons of trees long dead. Or maybe the shadows are mine, stretching too far, too long. The light moves again. Always away from me, always just beyond reach, teasing, I whisper to it. Nothing. Only the hum returns, louder now, vibrating in my teeth. I try to remember why I came. Was there a reason, or was it just curiosity? The desert does not answer. The sand begins to shift beneath me. I stumble, sinking deeper. Each step takes more effort, the fog heavier, closer, as though it wants to touch me. The light pulses slower now. It is neither bright nor dim. It just exists, waiting, patient, infinite. I walk again. Every sound seems distant, swallowed by the fog. I hear soft footsteps behind me, or think I do. I turn. Nothing. Only the desert, silent, stretching in all directions. I notice the horizon bending. The light has moved slightly, but the desert has moved too. Or maybe it's me. Distance and closeness blur, becoming meaningless. A shadow brushes my arm. Cold, fleeting. I can't tell if it belongs to me or the light. I speak its name, though I do not know its name. The words feel strange, hollow in my mouth. The hum swells, then recedes, leaving silence behind. I move faster. The fog parts in front of me, then closes behind. I am alone, yet not alone. The light grows again. It beckons. A pale heartbeat in the dark desert. I pause, leaning forward, exhausted. The sand whispers as my fingers trail over it. It feels almost like water, yet tastes like nothing. The horizon stretches endlessly. The light dims for a moment, then flares sharply as if aware of my hesitation. I step forward. Each footfall echoes softly, swallowed almost immediately by the fog. I wonder if I will reach it. I wonder if reaching it will change anything. The desert folds in around me. I can no longer see my own hands. Shapes loom, dissolve, and loom again. The light waits, always waiting. Patient, endless, I call out. No reply. Only the faintest shimmer, as if the light itself breathes with the desert. A strange warmth touches my cheeks, not from the light, but from somewhere behind it. I do not turn. The fog rises higher now, thick and tangible. My legs disappear. The world narrows to the pulse ahead. I take a final step, and another, and the light recedes, ever patient, ever distant. I stop. The fog envelops me completely. I feel it press against my chest, soft, insistent. The light waits. It always waits. And somewhere deep in the silence, I realize, so do I. The desert stretched, pale and endless, under a late afternoon sun that felt too heavy. Heat shimmered above the sand like a curtain, and my footsteps whispered against the dry ground. I had come for solitude, for the quiet that only emptiness can bring. But even here, the sand, it spoke. At first I thought it was the wind, a pattern in the dunes that looked almost deliberate. I paused. Squinting, I saw shapes, lines, letters etched into the surface. They weren't words I recognized. Not at first. But when I read them aloud, the letters shifted under my tongue, forming sentences I hadn't expected. You're too late. The words trembled on the sand, and a shiver ran down my spine. I took a step back. The message was gone. In its place, another? Why did you come here? My heart whispered faster than I wanted it to. The desert was alive, or at least it was pretending to be. I tried to reason, to tell myself it was a trick of the light. The dunes were just dunes, but the sand, it disagreed. I knelt, brushing a handful through my fingers. Letters lifted with the grains, forming a warning. I remember what you forgot. A memory I had buried for years came unbidden. A pale light flickered in my mind. The way my father had shouted, the way I had run, the way the desert had seemed endless even then. I swallowed, but the words kept forming. They followed my breath. They mocked it. I tried to move. The sand shifted beneath my boots. Patterns coiled like smoke, twisting into letters that danced just beyond comprehension. You can't leave without listening. The sun sank lower. Shadows stretched across the dunes, thin and sharp. Each step I took, the sand whispered again, almost in my own voice. I thought I heard laughter, but it was closer to a sigh. Soft, patient. I remembered my mother in a kitchen far away, humming while dust motes swirled in the air. The sand seemed to know her song. The rhythm pressed against my ears, and I shivered. Do you see them? I didn't know who it meant. The dunes or me? I turned in a circle. Nothing moved, yet every grain trembled, shifting like it had a heartbeat. Words coalesced at my feet, then vanished before I could read them fully. I crouched, pressing my palms to the warm grains. The letters traced themselves in my skin as I read, and suddenly I could feel the desert's memory. Old winds that had scoured bones, animals that had vanished, travelers who had lost their way. It all hummed beneath my fingers. I wanted to run, but the sand, it wasn't done with me. It shaped a new line, thin, urgent. You can't leave what you've buried. A chill in the desert heat. A shadow that was too long, too deliberate. I stepped back. The words faded. I squinted. The dunes, they rippled, as if the desert itself breathed. I thought of my own fear, my own secrets, and the sand answered. A whisper I felt more than heard. You brought them here. I shook my head, unwilling to believe. Yet every time I blinked, new letters formed. Sometimes accusatory, sometimes tender, always impossible to ignore. I imagined kneeling, listening to each one, reading each confession aloud. Stay, it said once, almost kindly. Then, or forget. I could not decide which was worse. The sun was gone now, leaving only a pale afterglow. The dunes glimmered in soft moonlight, shifting silently. I felt I had been walking for hours, yet the horizon never changed. The wind stirred lightly. The letters appeared again, faint, like smoke curling over embers. I leaned down. I traced a line with my finger. Some memories live in sand, waiting to be read. And then, nothing. The desert seemed still. I breathed in, trying to will the shapes from my mind. The sand remained quiet, but I could feel it pulsing under the moonlight. Alive. Watching. I stepped back. The grains shifted faintly, almost smiling in the pale light. And I knew. The desert would speak again, someday. When I had forgotten everything else. The dunes held their secrets. And I had walked among them, a visitor in their memory, a whisper on the wind. The desert stretches endlessly. Shadows stretch longer than they should. Even the wind hesitates here. I found the outpost by chance. Or maybe it was waiting for me. A pale glow flickered through the cracked windows. The sand crunched under my boots, uneven, deliberate. Footsteps? No, only mine. Inside, the air was thick. Soft, insistent, almost alive. The devices along the walls blinked erratically, static whispering in tongues I didn't recognize. Cables coiled like snakes across the floor. Dust drifted in the pale light, settling over screens that flickered too quickly to see. I felt watched. The furniture was overturned. Drawers yawned open, empty. Paper curled into ash-colored shapes like someone had left in a rush. No blood, no signs of struggle. A monitor sputtered to life. A map, fractured lines glowing faintly. Red dots blinked, then vanished. I whispered to myself, why leave like this? No answer. The hum deepened, vibrating through the floor. I pressed my palm against the metal, warmth lingering where it shouldn't. A whisper slid through the static, soft but urgent. I couldn't understand, or didn't want to. The desert sun was dipping low outside. Shadows pooled inside the outpost, bending along the walls. Every corner seemed to breathe. I found a journal, edges blackened, pages curling. The words were scratched in haste. Gone too far. They are coming. Leave. Now. No signature. No explanation. Only the sense of finality. The hum became a voice. I froze. Soft footsteps or wind indistinguishable. The air grew heavier. I could taste static on my tongue, a flicker in the corner of my eye. Nothing. Then again. And again. A shadow stretched, too tall, too fluid, disappearing when I blinked. The devices pulsed, a heartbeat of light in the darkness. A screen showed a door, one I hadn't seen. It opened slowly into a black void that seemed to swallow the glow. I approached, breath shallow, hands trembling. The temperature dropped. My pulse echoed in my ears. I imagined voices murmuring, fading, repeating. Go, leave, stay. I couldn't tell which was real. Outside, the wind picked up. The desert whispered back, carrying something soft, like wings or cloth brushing stone. The horizon seemed to shift, not with the sun, but with something alive beneath the sand. I stepped back. The devices blinked faster, a warning I couldn't ignore. A door slammed somewhere behind me. Dust swirled, revealing nothing, yet I felt the space around me contract. I noticed footprints, small, deliberate, leading nowhere, and then disappearing, erased, as if they'd never existed. No human remains, but a story etched into the floorboards, invisible to the eye. I reached for a panel, trying to shut the devices off. Fingers brushed against ice-cold metal. The screens erupted in static, faces flickering, pale and distorted. I blinked, and they were gone. Silence fell. Soft, complete, like the world had held its breath. I sank to the floor, listening to my own heartbeat loud against the quiet. A single light pulsed in the corner. Faint, almost hesitant, like it wanted me to leave or follow. I wanted to step closer. I wanted to run. I didn't move. Outside, the desert bled into night. The outpost's glow dimmed, like it was exhaling slowly. I could almost imagine the people who had been here, long gone, leaving warnings in code, in hums, in shadows. I stepped toward the door. A gust of wind followed, warm and hollow, carrying a whisper I almost recognized. Not a voice, but intention. Not a message, but warning. I paused, hand on the frame. The glow behind me flickered once, then nothing. I walked into the desert. The outpost faded behind me, a pale memory. Yet I can still feel it humming beneath my skin. And sometimes when the wind is right, I hear the whisper again. The forest was quieter than I remembered. A late autumn fog draped the trees in soft gray veils. The ground was damp, sticky with fallen leaves, and the air smelled of cold earth. I stopped at the edge. The path behind me was swallowed by mist. The wind barely stirred, and then I saw it. A pale shape drifting through the fog. It had been there before, years ago, at the beginning of all my memory of this place. It moved without sound. No rustle, no snapping twig, no whisper of motion. Just an impossible patience. I blinked, hoping the fog had played a trick, hoping I had imagined the first time, but it lingered. A shadow, though not dark, more like a hole in the gray, shifting, uncertain, but aware. The mist curled around it, bending and twisting as if it knew the shape had claim here. My hands felt cold. I could sense the fog clinging to my skin, damp and unnatural. I wanted to run. I wanted to turn back, to step out of the forest, out of its gaze. But my feet refused. It moved closer, slowly, patiently. I counted heartbeats, trying to steady the tremor in my chest. The pale form took shape now, like smoke yet solid, like water yet still. It was impossible to measure distance. A step felt like a mile. Yet I could see it shifting, folding in on itself, reflecting nothing familiar. I wanted to speak. A name, a plea, a prayer. No sound came. Only the hush of fog pressing against my ears. The forest seemed to breathe with it. A soft, slow hum, low and steady. I realized then it had always been there. Waiting. The trees bent slightly, though there was no wind. Shadows pooled unnaturally at the base of trunks. The fog thickened, hiding the path behind me, hiding the way forward. I tried to remember light. Sun through branches, a glimpse of sky. But everything was pale gray, endless, dissolving. It paused. Or perhaps it had never moved at all. Time felt hollow here. The edges of the shape quivered. A subtle sway, like breathing, though I could not tell. And with it the temperature shifted. Cold seeped into my bones, a slow erosion of warmth. I thought of leaving, thought of turning around. But the mist held me. It was patient, watching, waiting for me to understand. I did not understand, but I felt the truth of it. A presence older than memory, untouched by thought. The forest exhaled. Soft steps echoed somewhere, my own, or something else moving without trace. I wanted to blink, to shake my head, to deny what I saw, But the shape was clearer now, more definite, its form pulsing like a pale lantern in the fog. I tried to step back. One foot lifted, then the other. The mist thickened around my ankles, curling up, slowing me, and I realized I was not alone. The shape was close enough now that the fog felt part of it, part of its breathing. My own breath became loud in my ears. I held it, then let it escape slowly, trying to match the rhythm of the fog. It swayed gently, almost like it was acknowledging me, or testing me. A rustling, soft, barely perceptible. Leaves shifting, though no wind. And for a moment the world seemed paused. The shape leaned closer. Not toward me, not away, just closer, folding the fog around itself in impossible angles. I wondered if I had ever left this place at all. If I had ever been elsewhere. If the memory of the world outside was just another layer of mist. My hands were cold, wet, shaking. I wanted to speak, but the shape made no sound. It needed nothing from me, yet demanded everything. The fog carried the faintest whisper. Or perhaps it was the memory of whisper, a language I almost remembered, just beyond the edge of thought. I could feel it in my chest, a slow, pulsing weight, neither heavy nor light, a presence that was not cruel nor kind, simply there. And I realized finally that I could not leave, not yet, perhaps never. The forest receded into gray. The shape remained patient, watching, always watching. I breathed in the fog. I felt it coil around me. And I understood in a way words cannot hold that some things do not end. I stepped forward, unsure if it was toward it or into it, or simply into myself. The mist closed around me, and still it waited. The forest exhaled again, a soft, endless hum. And the shape remained pale, shifting, eternal. I did not try to name it. I did not try to understand. I only watched and felt the fog fold and fold and fold, and perhaps that was enough.